What's up, Sports Spectrum? It's your host, Matt Forte, with my wise counsel, Jason Romano, my man, Jay Nice. And we got a special episode for you today. We are the guests of our
Yeah,
own podcast. We've been on here together before, but not in this capacity. So this is something new. We actually want to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have. So we're actually going to answer some of these questions that the listeners have, responded and what they want to know about. And
yeah,
Jason, I think you got the first one.
I do. I do. Before we get to it, Matt, I just got to ask you because it's Thanksgiving week, obviously, and yesterday was Thanksgiving. As people hear this, before I go to the Twitter questions or the social media questions, what's your Thanksgiving playing experience with? I think it was just with the Bears. I don't think you played Thanksgiving games with the Jets, but
Hmm.
what was that like turning around 4 days later? And there's football games today, by the way, too, on Friday. They have Black Friday games now, which is crazy with the Chiefs and the Raiders. But what was your football playing experience like? What do you remember about Thanksgiving and turning around and having to play football so quickly?
Oh, I hated it.
Not
I
a
hated it, man. I wanted to be, home with the family and to enjoy and be thankful for everything that I have and all of that. But um, it is a sacrifice, and it's a mindset as well. So I knew going into it, it's like, I would love to be at home with my mom and dad and wife and kids and everybody and to enjoy this day. But I know maybe it'll bring them joy going out there on the field and being able to play
yeah.
on Thanksgiving. But um, I remember having a tough one against Detroit one year. And that didn't make it. It's always great when you win, obviously. But playing on Thanksgiving and having a tough game that didn't go your way, that's not the greatest, but
And always on the road too. Like the Bears aren't hosting things.
yeah,
Like even just yesterday, it was Bears Lions, right? So it's like they're not playing at home. They're always going on the road to Detroit. And I know it's a quick flight, but you still got to be away from your family on Thanksgiving.
yeah, it's kind of rough. You play, and depending on how at what time the game is too. Either way, even if you play the noon game, um, you're still gonna fly back and get home later than everybody's probably already done eating and
Right.
everything, and then so you're sitting there and your plate has to be reheated, and maybe they'll sit around
You're
by you
getting the
with their
real leftovers.
yeah, you're getting the extra leftovers, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's it literally, I had to think, is like, man, this is only a part of a season of life where you're gonna have to do this,
Right.
and all the other Thanksgivings that you're gonna get to enjoy are
That's
gonna
true.
make it worthwhile.
What's your body feel like I mean, as a running back, right? You're
Oh
getting hit all
man,
the time. It's gotta be really hard because the recovery period is so important to an NFL player, and then to turn around and try to do it in basically 2.5 days is so hard.
yeah. Most of the times, Wednesday and Thursday is when I just am getting back to really running out there, full speed after a game on Sunday.
Yeah.
So the Thursday games are rough in themselves. Just your body is super beat up, and it's not like you can speed up recovery um, by just like doing more of it. It's time based a lot of times, where the soreness and stuff like that, you can do things nutrition wise or ice tub and physical therapy wise to try to you know make as much ground or headway as you can. But you're never 100% anyway, but you're not even going to be close to what your normal game day is. And to be honest, man, with all the rule changes and stuff for the NFL, and look, I'm not coming for commissioner, I'm not coming for anybody, but all these rule changes of player safety,
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. If we really cared about player safety, we wouldn't play on Thursday night. There wouldn't be Thursday games.
Right.
Think about that. That's way too fast of a turnaround. And so when we talk about changing rules, the rules don't matter if you're playing a game within that close of a time frame to each other. So that's my big spiel when we talk about player safety and guys ask about that. Like, really doesn't matter if you change a bunch of rules if guys are going out there on Thursday. And honestly, if you watch Thursday night games, it's some of the sloppiest NFL football that you'll see, and
Yes.
a ton of guys get hurt. Earlier in the season, we saw a lot of starters go down on both sides of each team that would be playing, um, and it's evident that it's not. The game is way too physical to play in that quick of a turnaround.
Yeah. Well, it's weird too because this year, for the first time, the NFL's playing games on Christmas, and I shouldn't say for the first time ever on Christmas, for the first time ever on a Wednesday on
Mm,
Christmas. Now, football on a Wednesday is just weird, but hey, if you're going to have viewers and you want eyeballs and the almighty dollar is involved, the teams that are playing on Christmas are playing on Saturday. So they're treating it like the equivalent of playing on Sunday and turning around on Thursday. But like you just stated, that player safety thing that's a real thing, man. And I don't know. I'm not here to, like you said, I'm not here to debate or call out anybody in the NFL or anything like that. But there's only one reason they're playing Thursday night games or even Wednesday games on Christmas. To me,
yeah,
it's one reason. It's because you're going to get a lot of eyeballs and make a lot of money off it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's at the player's expense, and it's
yeah,
there. Although players do get paid a lot of money and things, but that doesn't mean that you have to run the risk of doing that in order for primetime games and in order to make the most or
right.
basically you know exploit athleticism to make the big buck. I'll
Yeah.
just say that.
But
So
welcome to the world of the NFL, and not just the NFL, of professional sports in general, right?
yeah,
And that's
that's
kind of
right.
where we are in 2024, unfortunately.
I'm interested to see, Jay, if in the future as it continues, because you see a lot of different things. You see guys who represent themselves, they don't have agents anymore, or a lot of different nuances, people going against the grain sometimes. I want to see if there ever comes a collective of guys who say, or who even write into their contract that have the actual leverage like a starting quarterback would, to say, you know what, I'm not playing on Thursday nights.
Can you imagine?
And literally, like, for the sake of the longevity of my career, because I know the adverse risk that it takes, that I'm not playing on Thursday nights, and it's going to be written into my contract. Because if we look at it on both sides, it is a business. You have to use your leverage. And I remember negotiating my contract, and they put in it where, first of all, the first 4 years I played, I had only missed 4 games, and that was in the last year of my deal, and that was when I was leading the league in rushing. And so I negotiated a new deal. It took them a long time to do it. We all know the Bears and how that happened.
Yep.
Um, but they put in there a injury clause where if I missed the game, there was a amount of money that was a bonus that I wouldn't get.
Okay.
And so if you think about it, if you put it into your contract, you say, look, this is putting me at risk to not play multiple weeks in the season. It's like, I'm not going to play on Thursday nights.
Hmm.
I wonder how that would change people's, game. And if enough did it, you mean, it'd have to be, there's power in unity, but if enough did it, I think it could change the thought about these Thursday,
It's gonna.
games.
I mean, but then when you have Amazon come in and whatever they paid, I don't even know the number, but it was probably like $500 million for a package, some crazy number for a package of games. Yeah, it's gonna be if you get some of that 500 million in the players, wallets a little bit more, then
Yeah.
maybe. But I'm not sure how much more you guys are getting paid, whether you're playing on
Yeah.
Sunday, Thursday, Wednesday, or whenever it might
And I
be.
mean, it's strategic. Like when I first came into the league in 2008, we didn't have any Thursday night games. It was Sunday night or Monday night.
Except
And
Thanksgiving, of
and then
course.
yeah,
Except
Thanksgiving. And then it's like, as they continue to make money and change the collective bargaining agreement, they say, you know what? Those Thursday games for Thanksgiving actually generate a lot of eyes, a lot of money.
oh yeah,
We should do, every team plays a different Thursday night game. So, you
fascinating.
know, there was no research on the health side of the game. It
Right.
was all on the revenue side of the game.
Yeah, the economic side. Yeah, wow. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But thank you for sharing that, no doubt. And we could have more discussions on that on future episodes for sure. So let's get to a couple questions. They came in through Twitter X, and you can tweet at Matt. What is it, Matt Forte 22? You're on Twitter. You can DM or hit us up on Instagram as well, Matt or myself. I'm Jason Romano on Twitter and Instagram. Love to hear from you guys. If you have questions that you want answered by Matt on the podcast, this is something we're going to do more of in the future, especially into 2025, as we welcome Matt, obviously, as a co-host these last month or two. By the way, real quick, how have you been liking this? This has been fun for you, right? To host this
No,
show?
this has been amazing, man. It's
Good.
something that I'm passionate about. I was just on Moody Radio
Yes.
a little
Yep.
while ago, and talking with them. Those are some good friends over there, Carl and the crew. And, really, I explained to them, they were asking me about Sports Spectrum and why the podcast and why to do this. And just literally, man, to be able to glorify God in this way and to give a lot of insight on experience through professional sports, but then to hear the stories and the testimonies of other people.
Yeah.
Um, some of my favorite interviews have been guys who are athletes and girls who are relatively not household names, but they have this testimony of how God has brought them through a painful and you know uh, purposeful past.
Yeah.
And to see how, it's one thing to hear a story of trial to triumph, but to insert God's hand within it and to highlight that and to see it, that is encouraging. And that's what I love about this platform, to be able to talk to people from all different backgrounds and,
Hmm.
ethnicities and everything. Um, and ages, and then just to hear the wisdom that comes from them through the experience of
Yes.
literally most of the time a trial, or being literally, like we say, putting them through the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's cool is in December, just to give a little pop for the upcoming podcast, we got a ton of different people, men, women. We got Olympic athletes, we got former players, we got current players in pro sports, we got former coaches, we got NLCS MVPs. You guys can guess who that is coming up this month. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And we got a pastor coming up at the very end of December. So we're spanning the spectrum, if you will, pun intended there, of sports intentionally. But it's going to be a lot of fun for people to hear the conversations that you're having, and I'm happy to be a part of it with you. You mentioned different backgrounds and races. Well, the first question that we got from Twitter X, and by the way, I should say this: if anybody wants to suggest guest ideas, we used to do this a lot when I was hosting back in like 2018, 2019. But I would love for people to send Matt Forte 22, or myself, or both of us, your guest ideas. We can't promise we'll say yes to every one of them, but we're always looking for different people to talk to or different stories to kind of highlight and focus. And so please send those along through social media as well. But here's the first question, Matt. So we're getting right to it. We're going right at it here. This is John sending this through Twitter X, and he says, Matt, have you ever had a Muslim teammate? If so, what were your thoughts on their beliefs, fasting during the football season? What did you have in common religiously, if anything?
Yeah, no, I never had a Muslim teammate, and but I have had teammates who um, were either non-believers, or maybe they believe maybe they believe in God, but they really weren't really interested in Bible study, or getting to know God on a relational aspect.
Sure.
And when you're in the locker room, there's all different creeds and backgrounds and everything. It's a melting pot. Um, and I think one thing that is cool is that, in knowing that God has placed us on this earth, not just in the locker room, but on this earth to be salt and light.
Mm,
And as Paul said, to speak the truth in love. Any person I've ever come across, and I've come across more people of different faith, and the Muslim faith, um, in retirement more than ever.
mm,
And uh, the biggest thing that I take out of it is I'm not here to debate. I'm not here to, because when you think of it that way, you're trying to win. You're trying to win something. And as Jesus said, look, I'm gonna make you fishers of men. I'm not here to win an argument or to win a debate about what is the correct uh way to serve God.
yeah.
And and actually, when it really comes down to it, you can say all that you want to say. The best thing that we can do uh to literally be, as we're called, to be salt and light, or to speak the truth in love, is to do that, to be that, to
Yes.
embody that. And what that looks like is literally how Jesus would approach people. There's a craft to it. And I think as Christians, we sometimes get that um, the perspective off, or wrong, because we're trying to convince somebody, or to change, you know, their perspective.
Yeah, it's
Really,
persuasion Christianity in many
yeah,
ways, right?
yeah. So what we're really there to do is to love on them, to show them, the experience, I would say, of how God loves. And that makes a big difference than just me telling you facts about something. Um, because when it really comes down to it, it's not my I can't make you change or think anything. Like that's not what the Holy Spirit uh has blessed us to do. That's God's job. That's his word does not return void, he says. So um but we're there to we're literally, farmers. We're there to plant seed, and you never know if that's the person's first time hearing about this so-called man named Jesus, or their third or fourth or fifth time. But I know one thing is that God never stops pursuing his children,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Go ahead.
that's no, he never stops pursuing his children, and um, we have to be his hands and feet, as it's called. And how good is it and how cool is it that God um, wants to use us,
Right.
to be an extension of him, to be an extension of the kingdom, um, because we're not from here, we're not from earth, and nobody's gonna stay here. um,
No, I think where you took this is really great too. I mean, that question is about a Muslim teammate, but ultimately it's the question that we're all going to have to wrestle with as believers in Jesus is how do we have conversations? How do we maintain friendships? How do we speak? How do we love? How do we serve those that believe different? And ultimately, how do we, stay unashamed and defend, if you will, the gospel without having to have a debate, like you say. I even hesitate to use that word defend, because it's not really our job to debate, but we do need to know what we believe.
mhm.
I think it's First Peter talks about um, to always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that's within you. So we need to be able to talk to people about what we believe. But I'm also reading John 15. I got it right here, in Jesus, where he talks about being the true vine. But when you go a little bit further, he talks about love and joy perfected. And in verse 12 of chapter 15 in the book of John, Jesus says, "This is my commandment." Commandment means I'm commanding you, right? To love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. So we're talking about loving others the way Jesus loved us. That's hard, by the way, because a lot of people may not be lovable
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
but that's really, I think, when we love and serve others, that's ultimately going to be where people can believe, that, or not believe, but just, I guess, get along with you and understand, okay, I may agree differently, but this person actually genuinely cares about me. Now let's hear what you believe. And I think those are the moments where with love and enjoy and just empathy in many ways, we can really be that witness for Christ to others when we come in contact with them, those that believe different.
yeah. I think it's I think it's amazing to, like, when you read the Word of God and how things match up, because um, the fruit of the Spirit, which is, I believe in Galatians
Galatians
5,
6 or Galatians 5, you're right.
5.
Yep.
The first one that is listed is love. So
Yes.
you got love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. But
That's right.
love is the one that is mentioned first. And as Jesus, as you just read in John, when he said he commands us to love, that is what goes further than anything else. It's going further than your words. It's going further than your actions and everything. The way that you love. And he also says, to my disciples, this is how you'll be known. You'll be known by the fruit that you bear. But what is the fruit? What's the fruit of the Spirit? Love is the
Love
very
first.
first one.
Yeah.
So the way you love people is the fruit that you bear, first and foremost. And if we look at the way that Jesus loved, he washed the feet of Judas, who, when he already knew he was going to betray him. Like, now that doesn't mean that you be a doormat and let people walk all over you, but you do give people grace. You
Hmm.
do have mercy, give mercy. Um, but at the same time too, you love people in a way that is transformational, and it's probably unexpected, where in a situation where, like you said, it's hard to love unlovable people.
Like
That is
all
the
of us, right?
true.
It can be
Yeah,
all of us.
we can all be unlovable at
That's
times,
what I
right?
mean. Yeah.
uh, but that is the true, probably the most revealing factor of your real love for someone. It's easy to love lovable people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I love my children. They're my children, right?
Yeah, but I bet your children aren't always lovable sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they're not lovable when I
Gotta
gotta
act 'em up.
when I
Yeah.
step on a Lego in the middle of the night or gotta clean up after them and everything. So,
Yep.
um, but that's love is the great revealer of what's really in our hearts, um, and what's the inside that God is doing and transforming. Um, you can tell and you can personally tell when you have a hardened heart. Your
Mm,
temper is a little more shorter. Um, you don't really give grace to people, and you maybe even if you're in your car, somebody cuts you off, you're like, I got to get them back, you
yeah.
know.
Revenge.
And when you don't feel the need or the urge to do that, that's when you know you're walking in love.
Did you have that issue at all as a player? Because I'm sure you got in some pushing and shoving and shouting and screaming matches and maybe even some fights for all I know, whether it was internally, with your own team, but certainly with the team that's trying to tear your head off, the Green Bays and the Detroits and the Minnesotas of the world that you're playing twice a year. Um, what's it like there? Because people will say, well, that love thing, it's great, except in certain moments.
Hmm.
We have an episode coming up down the road here of us talking about taming the tongue, and what that means to like actually tame our tongue as Christians and as athletes. But what is that like to actually love your neighbor as yourself, which is the greatest commandment, second greatest commandment that Jesus
Hmm.
talks about, loving God and loving others? Like, what's that like as an athlete when you're out there, trying to win a game?
Yeah, it's sacrificial, and when it's out there, you're trying to win a game, man. I ain't trying to love the guy on the other team. I'm try- I sacrifice. I show the
Yeah,
love for my team and my teammates by loving them and sacrificing, for them. But
right.
there does come moments where somebody may take a cheap shot on you, uh, or get a personal foul or something like that. That's happened many times, especially when you're playing running back and um, they may be trying to knock you out of the game.
Sure. Yeah.
Honestly, and you recognize that and you want revenge. You want to get them back. But there's nothing, especially the great thing about football that from other sports is that physically between the whistles you can do that.
Right.
There's no problem with you know going and with in legally being able to hit somebody. It's just you know it's you take a cheap shot on someone or you try to like really if you in your mentality or your emotions towards it is I want to injure this person, then that's where you're wrong. What's the intent behind it? Now
Mm,
if your intent is to within the rules and within the the echo of the whistles, that's when that's real character comes out. um
yeah.
because and my thing is too, anybody can take a cheap shot on somebody. But can you head up on somebody face to face? Can you overpower them? That's when it's mano a mano. That's what it really comes down to. So yeah, I never really struggled, I would say, with um, anger on the field. I really was at a different kind of peace out there within the chaos of the game, that I was just really focused on doing my job and being able to try to score and help my team win. So I saw anger as being a distraction from what I needed to do in the game,
Hmm.
and therefore it helped me to even if somebody's trying to talk trash or if they took a late shot on you or whatever, or a cheap shot, I didn't let it bother me.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you saw last week when the Browns beat the Steelers in the snow. That was just so much fun, by the way, to watch a football game in the snow. But Jameis Winston, who we got to get on this show with you. We do. We just
Yeah.
have to do that at some point. But Jameis comes on before the game and he gives like this amazing pregame, interviews where he's basically answering questions with scripture, preparing the battle, and the victory is the Lord's, and it's all great stuff. But there was a 15-minute clip on YouTube, and people can go search for it. I think the Browns actually posted it themselves, where he was mic'd the whole game. And I watched it because I was just curious as a Christian. Everybody's different, of course. And Jameis feels like a guy who has a ton of joy exuded it within him right now, in his walk with Jesus. But I was like, all right, let me watch in the snow when he gets hit by Cam Hayward or one of those dudes on Pittsburgh. What's that going to be like? And he was able to keep the joy. I actually felt like he was truly loving on not only his teammates, he was great, but even the guys from the Steelers, in a weird way, uh, throughout the game. And he just kept talking about how grateful he was and how joyful he was to be playing football. And even when bad things happen, he's like, I made a bad throw. That's on me. Here we go. It's okay. I don't know, man. I mean, this kind of feels like this topic that we're talking about. Like, and then he did the post game interview. I don't know if you saw it with Amazon, where he was like doing Snow Angels with Richard Sherman and those guys. And so it was this joy that he had. Now everybody's personality is different. Jameis is definitely like this flamboyant, kind of outspoken, fun personality, whereas a guy like maybe yourself, a little more quiet, a little more reserved. But that was an example, at least I thought, Matt, of a guy who was living out his faith in love right there on the football field.
Yeah, yeah. See. The one thing about joy is that it's contagious,
Mm,
and you can see how infectious his joy is around the people around him, whether it's the locker room or whether it's his team or another team,
right.
and it's authentic. And I've known Jameis for a little while. At the PAO conference when he came in, me and my wife were when they did these core groups where you have a breakout and you have other couples with you, like three
Yeah.
or four. We were the leaders of the group when he was a young player and
Okay.
kind of first married.
Yeah.
Um, and to see his maturation and how much he's grown spiritually as well. I mean, you can tell he's living in the freedom of Christ, as what Paul talks about. There's freedom within Christ, and so in his relationship with Christ, he's out there on a platform. He just feels so grateful. He continue. You can see in the pregame and postgame interview, but especially pregame, he's looking at this platform. He's looking in the air. He's listening to the question, but he's looking at the stadium. He's taking it all in as far as
Yes.
this is a blessing to be here right now. And what's great about that is he's acknowledging God has given him this ability to do this, but he's not taking it for granted. And
Right.
at this moment in time, um, to enjoy it and to really enjoy that feeling of walking out on the field and before a game, because I'll know at some point you won't be able to do that anymore. It's not going to be the same feeling, but for him to recognize it now before it's gone is awesome, and to be able to glorify God in the way that he is
Well,
is is amazing.
and to watch how people were talking, even the reporters with Amazon, the guys that stick the mic in his face, like they want to talk to him. And it really reminded me, like, hey, you can be joyful and be open about your faith and be joyful and not be weird or, in your face or almost arrogant about it. You can just be joyful. And that's why Jameis, by the way, is going to continue to get mic'd up. And he's probably going to, if he's not a pastor, he's probably going to be a broadcaster. He may be both because of how infectious he is. But there's this pleasing aroma that the Bible talks about with Jesus. And I see it with him. And I'm hoping that as people are listening and they are wondering, like, what does this have to do with the question? I think it has everything to do with the question about loving others and serving others. Man, if you're just joyful, you should have the joy of the Lord
Hmm.
be your strength, like it talks about, I think, in Nehemiah, right? Like that's what it's about. And I don't know, man. I hope all of us could take away a little something from what we've seen with Jameis lately.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the greatest thing about it is that you can see that it's authentic. Like I said, is that
Yes.
because
Be
if it
yourself.
if it wasn't, it would fade and it would be fickle. Oh, we lost the game, and you see it different, or if something didn't go his way.
Totally.
Um, and I mean, that's the greatest way to live, is that freedom of being able to go and do what the Lord is calling you to do. And I also wanted to say too that I don't want people who listen to the podcast and we listen to people's trials and testimonies, that everything is always negative, and
Hmm.
then, oh, God will heal at the end. It's like, no, like God gives you joy within the circumstances that you're in, and so for you to enjoy them now in the midst of it is one of the greatest things, and it's the only thing that can make you content. As Paul's, I keep bringing up Paul, but Paul has a lot of good stuff. But
Yeah, he
to
does.
have contentment is
Yes.
the key. And you can see like in the joy that Jameis has while playing the game, he's content. He's content whether they win or whether they lose. He's content whether he throws for 400 yards or for 4 yards. He's content because he knows, and what comes with contentment is knowing that I'm not what I do. My
Right.
identity is in Christ. It's not in being an actual quarterback on this football team that so happens to be on TV. My identity is Christ. So whether I throw for, you know, make the Pro Bowl or maybe, or whether I'm a first round bust, whether I do either one of those, my standing with Christ is the same.
That's what Philippians 4:13 is really about, by the
Hmm.
way. We hear about I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's the verse right before that that
Yeah.
Paul writes in 4 verse 12, right? Where he talks about I am content in all circumstances.
Hmm.
So if I am a bust or if I am a Hall of Famer, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens. I can be content with wherever. By the way, Jameis was a third string quarterback, not seeing the light of day earlier this year. I bet you if we had him on then, he'd probably have been the same Jameis that he is now, getting a
Hmm.
chance to play football in the snow for the first time and win a football game. So
Yeah.
contentment, man. That's it. That's it. Well, let me read you one more question here from our listeners, and then we'll wind this episode down. This is a more of a football question. It's from Brandon. His name on Twitter is Brandon the Hammer. So that would be. I don't know if I want to meet this guy or not with that name. But Brandon just says, Matt, how do you view your legacy at Tulane? And what do you think of the state of the program now? They're having a pretty good year this year. Let's talk about Tulane for a second.
Yeah. I view my legacy as something that I didn't even start. And I love it to be that way. It's something that I continued. And, who knows? I got two sons. One is 14 and one is about to be 9. So, maybe they will, who knows? But my father started that legacy at Tulane in 1974. He played from 74 to 78, 30 years before I got there. And I was '04 to '08. So,
Mm,
um, he was a defensive tackle, and you know was uh he would. So Brandon, we're talking about Brandon the Hammer's question. My
yeah.
dad was a hammer. He used to tell me about these stories about Tulane had this hit stick where the guy who got the biggest hit in the game, or if you got a big hit, you get your name, you write your name on it. And he had a bunch of injuries in college. He had back then they would do MCL surgeries, which
Mm.
is crazy because I've had like 10 of those. And they
Oh,
but
man.
back then he's got these big 8-inch scars that's on inside of both knees. But though he would miss a bunch of seasons, halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, his name would be on the stick the most. So the
Mm.
legacy of Tulane is something that I was able to go there, and this is how good the Lord is I didn't want to play at Tulane. I wanted to go to a big SEC school. Obviously, being from Louisiana, I'm like, I'm gonna play at LSU, or I'm gonna play at some school that plays against LSU or whatever.
Right.
Because I figured the big school, the big stepping stone, you go to the NFL. And guys like, well, if you stick to my plan, even with a school that's smaller, maybe not as recognized for sports or football in general, I'll take care of you. You'll go where I want to put you. And
Right.
that's what happened. So to be able to my senior year to submit a legacy of 2,000 plus yards rushing,
Yeah.
2,127 to be exact. I always remember that number.
Of course.
Um, that is what submitting a legacy at Tulane has meant to me. But then the way that they're playing now, we had Coach Fritz come in, and he did an amazing job taking them to bowl games, which I never got to play in the bowl game. He came in and they were bowl game, bowl game, bowl game, and they actually beat USC
Yep.
when the Bears, Caleb Williams was actually the quarterback back then
That's right.
um, in the Cotton Bowl. And then now Coach Summerall is there, and he's doing an amazing job. They're ranked now. They've only lost 2 games where they lost to Oklahoma and I think Kansas State, which were 2 pretty good teams. And
Yeah.
I mean, they've been rolling. Those were early in the season, so I'm hoping that they continue, and I hope Coach Summerall stays around for a long time and somebody doesn't try to snatch him up.
You know how this plays out though. When you have success at whatever level, it's always the next level's coming after you
Hmm.
to try and get you to go. So yeah, I love what's happening at Tulane. And you're a guy that's you go back and visit. You were there this year, right? Didn't you speak to some of the players and staff there earlier this year?
Yeah, yeah. I came in, and that's one thing about Coach Summerall as well. I came in to talk to the athletic director and to see what they were doing, and actually try to help them do some bigger and better things NIL wise, because these college kids get paid now,
Yes, they
and
do.
we got to keep the good athletes around. And Coach Summerall, got to sit down with him, and he took time before the team meeting, and everything, just to sit down and talk with me. And we talked, football for 20 minutes. And he's like, you know what? You want to talk to the team? I was like, yeah, I'll talk to the team. So I went in there and talked about leadership, which was something that was already leading into what they were talking about
That's cool.
um, in their team meeting. But man, he's a guy who creates a great culture. Uh, After being in his team meeting, I wanted to suit up. It was crazy. I was like, man, this dude is amazing. They were giving out awards for off-season workouts,
Yeah,
and they had this big like spear that somebody won, and like this big machete knife thing, and it was just so cool being in there, and it brought me back to when I was at Tulane, and um, being in the locker room, but also the team meeting room and everything too, leading up into a season.
that's cool. Yeah, it's funny to think about if this will be a topic maybe for another conversation, but NIL when you're rushing for 2,127 yards, is that what you said?
Yeah,
What's that NIL look like for 22-year-old Matt Forte in college during that year? I would imagine it would be pretty eye-opening, right? Because you guys did make.
yeah.
I mean, there was no monies exchanged. There's obviously you got a scholarship and you got college for free and all that stuff, but NIL has changed the game
Yeah.
in today's world of sports because, like you said, keeping the athletes. College, if it's not careful, could turn into the NFL and just guys going where the money's the best.
It's interesting, man. Like
Yeah.
some of these guys NIL deals at the big, Alabama's, the Georgia, like these big schools like that. I mean, they're getting millions. I'm
Seven
talking about
figures.
seven,
Yes.
10, 7, 8, 9, $10 million, which
A lot.
that's life changing. So
And more than you might make in the
um,
NFL
exactly.
initially.
So the
Yeah.
interesting part will be how that dynamic turns out when they get to the NFL and have to take a pay cut. As far as like
Yes.
you're making less than you made in college.
Pay cut.
So
It's crazy.
um, it used to be a joke that we would mess with guys who went to the big schools, uh, and they would come in and maybe they went lower in the draft or maybe undrafted, and we're like, you got to take a pay cut, huh? And it used to be a joke, but like it's real now.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
most likely are taking a pay cut.
That's funny.
Um, but it'll be interesting. But at the same time, there's pros and cons to all of it. Uh, you know, I think I benefited from not having to be able to, or not being able to make a ton of money or whatever as a college player and being that young, because it just made me work harder and gave me that work ethic and the mindset that um, I haven't arrived and I not just made it. I don't think I would have changed given that I made the money early too either, but I think it shaped me in a way that benefited me better than having it now.
Yeah.
And then also some of these kids. I mean, I've been around some. My teammate as a senior broke his leg once and couldn't do anything as far as going into the draft and stuff. So if you had that NIL money, like you earned it,
Hmm.
because you gave your body and you sacrificed a lot of your health for the university and to play ball, but to get a good education as well. So
Yeah.
I understand it, and I hope that it does help some of the, or I guess help some cut against or go against the negative things that happen when guys play 2 or 3 years in the league, which is the average, and then go broke because they haven't made a ton of money or haven't made that much because they given their body towards college
Right.
and didn't have enough to last into the NFL.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I think people listening might be like, "Well, NIL, it's they're getting free college. Why do they need more money?" But I think when you're talking about athletes and what you're talking about, your name, image, and likeness, like the school was making money off these athletes for years and years. So I think it's fair. I just think it needs to be regulated on some level, or at least fine tuned, if you will, so that it's not the wild, wild west out
Yeah.
there in the way that it's been. So, yeah, man, this has been fun. We should do more of these. What do you think?
Yeah. I like it. I like it, man.
Me
We
too.
gotta we gotta do more of these, and I'm excited to hear and see some of the other questions as well from the fans, because I always like to know what's on their mind too, what they're thinking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a good reminder. So again, if you're on Twitter or Instagram, even Facebook, you can reach out to us. You can hit us up at Sports Spectrum. We're all over the social medias, but you can also hit Matt directly. You can hit me directly on Twitter X, or even on Instagram, and just let us know your questions. Let us know the guests we should be talking to, even just some feedback maybe on this episode. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and let's do it again soon, Matt. Appreciate you coming back on here, and this is fun. I'm just loving the fact that we get to do this together. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, you said it right. We get to do this. It's a blessing.
That's right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on Sports Spectrum. Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.